My closest buddy pushed me to spill my heart to my first crush at the alumni meet. But turns out, they'd been dating forever. She just wanted to roast me in front of everyone. So I ended up confessing my feelings to the school jock, who actually had a secret crush on me but never made a move before. The school jock. Shocked? Yeah, the campus hottie reincarnated. While hanging by the elevator at the karaoke bar with Maya, some dudes kept staring our way. That's Isla, the campus queen, right? She's even hotter in real life than her pics. She's like a total fairy, huh? I've always wanted a girl like her. She looked so stunning. I really wanted her digits, but she was too gorgeous for me to even try. Maya stood next to me, all expressionless, but her fists hidden in her sleeves were clenched tight. I suddenly figured she'd been pissed off with me for ages, right? Until a familiar face appeared, Maya shouted excitedly, "Ethan, over here!" "Coming, Maya." Ethan quickened his steps with a grin. When he reached me, I took a couple steps back quietly. Didn't even glance his way. Ethan paused a bit. Before, I'd have walked up to him first, no matter how he always acted annoyed with me. "Ethan, Jamie's got something to say tonight." "Right, Jamie?" Maya nudged me with her elbow, signaling me to speak, but I straight up pushed her hand away. "I know, Ethan." I turned my head to look the other way. 3 guys were walking over there. "Bro, Sun's here tonight too? Dude, your new ride is sick. When can I borrow it for a spin?" Jamie was just waking up and didn't want to chat, didn't even plan on coming. No clue what news he got. Ha ha. My gaze then landed on a guy named Ryan. He looked like he'd just rolled out of bed. His black hair was messy on his forehead, with his eyes half closed, one hand in his pocket, and the other idly twirling a car key. Only when his eyes met mine did his body tense up for a sec. Then he slowly lifted his eyes, but only glanced at me for a second before looking away. "Ethan, good evening." I took the lead and spoke up. Everyone around was kinda surprised. Ryan, the school jock, and Isla, the campus beauty, never really interacted before, right? Maybe they knew each other? Ryan was stunned for a moment and then replied slowly in a raspy voice, "Yeah, good evening." The 2 guys beside him exchanged knowing looks and then turned their heads aside, chuckling secretly. "Isla." Ethan looked at me with that annoyed look again, in a tone that assumed it was obvious. "When did you and Ryan start hanging out?" Like before, trying to put me in my place. But this time, I wasn't backing down. I rolled my eyes and snapped, "So what?" Ethan tightened his lips and stared at me, his eyes dark. "Isla, why you talking like that?" Maya was the first to stand up and defend Ethan. "Ethan's just looking out for you. He doesn't want you hooking up with that kind of guy." "Why are you being so rude?" "What kind of guy?" I stared back and said, "Is it someone who acts one way in front of others and another behind their back? Or someone who's full of lies, fake, and shameless? Don't get it twisted." "I'm talking about you." Ethan and I were childhood sweethearts. After becoming best friends with Maya, I naturally introduced him to her. And Maya knew I had a thing for Ethan, but while she was secretly flirting with him, she kept pushing me to go after Ethan. Even though I'd felt Ethan's weird distance and annoyance towards me, I never thought it was because of my so-called bestie. Maya didn't expect me to defend Ryan. She quickly tried to pull me aside, telling me not to forget to confess my love to Ethan. But I straight up pulled my arm out of her hand. Maya tugged hard and almost lost her balance. Ethan immediately held her up with a worried look. This time, the way he looked at me was like he wanted to rip me apart. "Isla, what's up? Apologize to Maya." His voice was super stern, loud enough for everyone around to hear. He glared at me fiercely and walked towards me step by step. I was forced to back up, but in the next second, my back hit a solid chest, and there was a nice sandalwood scent on him. I instinctively turned around, and my forehead bumped the tip of the young guy's nose. He held my arm and turned me to face Ethan. His palm was broad and warm. Ryan said in a chill tone, "Dude, what's up?" His voice was fierce, like my dog at home. He was standing up for me. I remembered that in my past life, I was so mad at Ethan that I cried and secretly turned away to wipe my tears. Back then, Ryan was chatting casually with his buddies not far away, but his eyes were on me the whole time. His brows were furrowed, his hand pressed firmly against the wall, veins bulging. That night, I got rejected and humiliated by Ethan. Ran back to my dorm crying. The next day, I heard from classmates that Ethan got beaten up last night. He was so bad it got him hospitalized. Now that I think about it, it must have been that guy. Bro, don't say that. Your Tibetan Mastiff at home is way more energetic than him. I can vouch. Plus, he's way more valuable than that guy. Ryan's little crew swayed over, quickly getting everyone's attention. The elevator door opened, but no one dared to go in. Want to fight? Ethan said coldly. No, no, Ryan corrected. Fighting's two-sided, but I can take you down solo. I believe Ryan wasn't just bluffing, so I politely stepped aside. Ryan, please. Ethan? All right, we're all classmates. It's all a misunderstanding, just a misunderstanding. Maya was scared. She quickly pushed Ethan towards the stairwell. She still gave me a look. Isla, don't be so petty. Don't forget why we came here tonight. I really wanted to slap her. In my past life, Maya pushed me to confess my love to Ethan and got rejected in public. He held Maya's hand and announced their relationship, and I was then labeled as a homewrecker. Overnight, I went from being the campus beauty everyone envied to a joke and a target of ridicule. Later, I got depressed and dropped out. During my time sick, I kept getting letters of encouragement. The handwriting was neat, just a few simple words. Hang in there. Someone's always got your back. Each letter came with a blue balloon flower. It wasn't until I died in a car crash that I found out those letters and flowers were all from Ryan. That guy I never paid attention to before, who blushed every time he saw me. Thinking about everything in my past life, my emotions surged, and my shoulders shook a bit. Ryan seemed to sense my weirdness. He hesitated and called my name. Isla. It sounded like a regular tone, but I heard a tenderness I'd never heard before. Yeah. I snapped back to reality. The elevator's here. I nodded and walked towards it immediately. Watch out. I didn't notice the elevator door closing. Ryan quickly stepped forward and reached out to block it for me, while someone beside us exaggeratedly exclaimed, I bumped into the guy's arms. At that moment, I could hear my heart racing. Ryan's hand was still on the doorframe. He was sideways to me, brow slightly furrowed, nose bridge high and straight, lips bright red. I couldn't help but sigh. How could someone who played football daily and fought in all kinds of weather still be so fair-skinned and have such soft skin? With my thoughts spinning like this, I reached the top floor hall. The classmates who arrived early had the music blasting, but when they saw Ryan's pissed face, they quietly turned the volume down. Actually, I don't think Ryan was in a bad mood. He just looked intimidating even without showing it. Isla, come here. Maya beckoned me to sit with them. Ethan was also staring straight at me. Before, whenever he looked at me, I definitely walked towards him. But things were different now. I sat wherever Ryan and his little crew sat. Those two followers were a bit flattered. What day is it today? The campus queen is actually sitting with us. The guys over there are going to be so jelly. Oh, crap. Ryan twitched the corner of his mouth. He held back a laugh and slapped the boy on the head. There's a girl here. Don't mess around. Suddenly, I thought that this bad student, famous all over school, was kinda cute. We sat in small groups like this. During this time, Maya gave me lots of looks, but I just pretended not to see them. Finally, she couldn't hold it anymore. Isla, didn't you say you had something to tell Ethan tonight? She raised her voice by an octave, getting everyone's attention. Isla, don't leave any regrets. All the stuff you've kept in your heart for years and wanted to say to Ethan, just say it tonight. I want to know too. The info in her words was seriously a lot. The classmates around started gossiping and talking. I smiled and nodded. Okay, I do have something I want to say in front of everyone tonight. I didn't miss the super excited and jealous look in Maya's eyes. Isla, go ahead and say it. She couldn't hide her excitement anymore, and her voice was shaking. Ethan was looking at me coldly, annoyed. In the silent room, I stood up, walked up to Ryan, and said loudly, Ryan, I've liked you for a long time. Be my boyfriend. There was chaos everywhere. The whole place was like it was hit by a bomb and exploded. Damn it! Ryan's little follower was so shocked he bumped into him. The guy seemed frozen on the spot. A blush spread from his earlobes to his pale face. He stared at me, his Adam's apple bobbing, a glimmer in his dark eyes. Are you serious? He said in a raspy voice. Of course. I smiled gently. What? Maya screamed. She didn't care about pretending and rushed up to me. Isla, why are you confessing to Ryan? Weren't you supposed to tell Ethan? Ethan? Seeing Ryan's eyes dim a bit, I turned around and saw Ethan standing up from the sofa. His face was super dark. I chuckled and said, Why should I confess to him? He's not my type at all. Isla? I'd never seen Ethan with that look before. Shock, astonishment, pain, disbelief, all kinds of crazy emotions flashed by, and he walked over. Ethan, what are you gonna do? Maya grabbed Ethan's hand almost instinctively. I smiled and said, Maya, I should really thank you for always pushing me to like him. But isn't he your boyfriend, right, Ethan? I looked at Ethan and he nodded in agreement. No, Maya was both shocked and anxious, wanting to defend herself. But by then, everyone already had their opinions, especially the girls, who immediately understood what was happening tonight. The class monitor, always outspoken, directly said, This is so messed up. She's always scheming against her best friend, pretending to be innocent and manipulative with guys. Maya's face turned bright red, but to my surprise, Ethan didn't seem to react. Suddenly, I felt he knew everything. He had just been agreeing with Maya's bullying and slandering of me all along. Ethan said calmly, Isla, are you kidding yourself? Just to make me mad? I was impressed by his confidence. I stared at him and said, Ethan, you've always trampled on my friendship, yet you expect me to heal and come back to you. Where does your confidence come from to keep hurting me like this? Do you think I really can't live without you? He fell silent. Ryan, who had just thawed out, reacted and stood in front of me. The guy's earlobes were as red as ripe cherries. Whether she's joking or not, she's got nothing to do with you now. But I was serious from the start. I blinked innocently. In the next second, I grabbed Ryan by the shoulder, turned him towards me, and kissed him straight up. Ryan's eyes widened. The classmates froze, and in the next second, they started yelling loudly. Oh my God, can I watch this for free? Help, this damn compatibility. Ah, my goddess. Suddenly, I realized that only Ryan could match the campus queen's beauty, and the guy I was kissing even stopped breathing. There was a shallow scar at the corner of his eye, now hidden by the shadow of his long eyelashes. Ryan looked at me in shock, his long lashes not blinking at all. However, this made me even more curious. Did this guy know his eyes were really beautiful? I was like teasing an innocent guy. I deliberately rubbed his lips and said softly, Ryan, why are you so easy to blush? Don't you even know how to kiss your girl? His face turned even redder. The guy reached out and cupped the back of my head, deepening the kiss forcefully. In 2 lifetimes, this was my first kiss. Didn't expect him to be so proactive. It seemed I was just caught up in the moment. When I saw him, I just wanted to kiss him. Is this what starting a real relationship feels like? It felt pretty sweet. Gradually, I closed my eyes. That night, I felt dizzy all the time, and my last memory was Ryan sending me back to the dorm. As for Ethan and Maya, I didn't pay any attention to them at all. I blocked them both as soon as I got back. The friendship among the 3 was too much. Didn't need anyone pushing me out. I leave on my own. As soon as I got back to the dorm, Maya came knocking on my door, saying I'd misunderstood and she wanted to explain. She said she didn't have any other thoughts about Ethan. She emphasized her tone and asked, Isla, do you really not like Ethan anymore? Didn't you say you liked him because he was handsome and mature, and you two grew up together as childhood sweethearts? I understood Maya couldn't accept that the only thing she'd won over me was already abandoned by me. Her feelings for Ethan might not be love, but just a competitive mindset. Isla, could you please come out and meet me? Maya kept standing outside the door and knocking until my roommate came back and drove her away. My eyes were glued to my phone screen, and the corners of my mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. Ryan had just added my contact tonight. He asked nervously, Are we really together? I'm super innocent. Don't lie to me. I burst out laughing. I found 2 couple avatars and sent them to him. Ryan changed them super quickly. He said, I'm still kinda excited. I said with a smile, Don't be so hyped. Let's go to class together tomorrow. Good night, my boyfriend. Okay, good night, my girlfriend. Later, I heard from his roommate that he was way more than a bit excited. That night, he almost tore his dorm apart. He ran to the corridor and shouted, Isla is my girlfriend, until his voice was hoarse. No one dared to stop him. In the end, he stopped when he was out of breath. Then he went to take a cold shower in the bathroom. Still couldn't control his excitement, he went to run laps on the playground. That night, I put down my phone and lay on the bed, but couldn't sleep for a long time. In my past life, during the time I dropped out, I mostly spent it taking meds and seeing doctors. I was no longer the envy of others. But once I was good in studies, great at singing and dancing, recognized as the all-round campus beauty by my classmates, and a role model for younger students. After I fell from grace, it seemed everyone forgot me, except him. Ryan would never abandon Isla. Because of him, slowly, no one dared gossip about me behind my back anymore. Even in the new campus beauty contest, Ryan voted for me with his real name. On the day of the school voting election, I was sitting by the windowsill at home, thinking for the umpteenth time whether to jump or not. Mom rushed into my room with her phone in hand, trembling, and said, Daughter, look quick. Your classmates haven't all forgotten you. This guy voted for you. In the live video, in the huge voting venue, Ryan was wearing a black suit he rarely wore. He looked serious and out of place, walking alone to the stage in front of everyone's eyes. He seemed not to care about anyone present. He, who had always been careless about everything, placed the sign with the two big words Isla on the table extremely solemnly. The only lonely vote was more eye-catching than anyone else's name. At that moment, the sunlight was shining brightly. The guy looked at the sign in his hand and smiled. Frankly, this campus beauty election was completely unnecessary. The gap was too big. The host was a bit lost with this unexpected situation on the spot. He hesitated and asked, Ryan, are you sure? Of course I'm sure. The guy slightly raised his eyes to the camera and said with a confident smile, If I, Ryan, fall for someone, I'll choose her again and again. 1,000 times, 10,000 times. Until I die. I stared blankly at the screen and suddenly remembered the person who wrote anonymous letters to encourage me. On one of the letters, there was a drawing of a girl leading a dog that looked kind of funny. The dog was wearing black clothes and had a scar under its eye. On the back was written, The dog will never abandon you. The dog will always be passionate and loyal to you. Remembering the words, The dog will never abandon you. The dog will always be passionate and loyal to you. And the funny look of the dog in the picture, I couldn't help but laugh. It seemed to be the first time I laughed since getting sick. Mom looked at me in shock and excitement as I finally showed emotions a normal person should have. She stood there at a loss. After a while, she came over crying and hugged me. Now that I've been reborn, I will never let down anyone who likes me again. I won't let others destroy me easily either. The next morning, Ryan and I walked hand in hand on campus, and people passing by couldn't help but glance at us twice. Ryan usually had his bangs stuck up stubbornly and unruly, but today they hung down naturally, which, combined with his big black eyes, gave a strangely cute look. Suddenly, I really wanted to kiss him. Just then, we passed by a kid eating candied haws. The kid had big eyes that were especially lively and cute. I was immediately captivated. I shyly pointed at the child and said to Ryan, Look, I want one like that too. I also want to have a kid like that with you. I thought that the combo of Ryan's and my genes must be solid. It'd be best to have a boy and a girl. The son would take after him, and the daughter would take after me. Ryan nodded as if he suddenly got it. I got it. I promise you'll have what others have. He looked around and then let go of my hand and ran to one side. What are you doing? I was stunned. The guy quickened his pace without looking back. Wait for me. I'll bring you candied haws right away. Ryan, could you be any more straightforward? I simply sat on the bench by the roadside and played with my phone while waiting for him. I was playing Candy Crush with great enthusiasm when a pair of footsteps, neither too light nor too heavy, stopped in front of me. Ryan, is that you? The smile on my face disappeared instantly, and Ethan, unusually, smiled at me. He was holding a steaming and fragrant bag of small steamed buns in his hand. You haven't eaten yet, right? Here, your favorite Nanchang small steamed buns. He handed the bag to me, but I raised my hand and knocked the bag over. Ethan, do you know? I died once before. In both body and spirit, what I can't let myself do is repeat the same mistakes. Sorry, my boyfriend will take me to eat soon. After a pause, thinking I couldn't let her off easily, I bent down to pick up the bag and neatly threw it into the trash can. Ethan smiled and watched all this from start to finish. Isla, you've always been such a proud girl, I replied rudely. You've always been so crazy. After saying that, I was about to leave, but Ethan suddenly raised his voice. Have you ever seen Ryan drink and fight with others with his crew? Have you ever seen him play dice and drink at a bar? Do you know there are many girls around Ryan and he might just be playing with you? I turned my head and looked at him expressionlessly. Ethan's voice became a bit steadier. He said, You've never had any contact with Ryan before. Isla, do you really like him? A guy like him who's not decent, is he worth your time? The rest of his words were blocked back. I withdrew my hand, and Ethan reached out in disbelief and touched the side of my face that I had just slapped aside. You hit me for him? Yes. I stared at him fiercely and smiled. You cursed my boyfriend as not decent. Why didn't I beat you to death? There was nothing but shock and confusion in Ethan's eyes. Yeah, I used to be super chill and mellow. I wouldn't even fight with others. And I wouldn't say harsh words. Whenever I shed tears or even fought with others, I wouldn't say harsh words. Whenever I cried because of Ethan, he'd disdainfully say I was just like a spoiled flower, making me cry over the smallest things. He told me to go find those boys who'd spoil and pamper me because he definitely wouldn't. Actually, most of the time when I cried back then, it was because I was sad that he'd never stand by my side. Ethan? A scream came. Maya didn't know where she'd been hiding just now. At this moment, she rushed out and anxiously held Ethan's face to check. Are you hurt? Is it serious? Isla, you've gone too far. How could you do this to Ethan? She kept babbling on, but Ethan kept looking straight at me. Suddenly, he interrupted her words. Isla, you've changed. Thanks for the affirmation. I took out a tissue from my pocket, wiped my hands vigorously, and threw it into the trash can. Ethan, let's go. Maya's expression darkened a bit. She pulled Ethan's arm and dragged him away forcefully. Ethan followed her and left, but he still turned his head towards me. After walking a few steps, he stopped. There were still complex emotions in his eyes. Facing their gazes, I turned around expressionlessly. Under the camphor tree in front, there was a tall and slender figure standing. The guy was holding a candied haw on a stick in his hand. He smiled at me with his eyes narrowed in the faint morning sun. My eyes suddenly lit up. Ryan! I smiled and rushed towards him. He opened his arms and caught me. I hugged his slender waist tightly and secretly thought it felt really nice to hold him. His arms were long and could wrap around me completely. Isla! Ryan's voice fell on top of my head, gentle and soft. Actually, you don't have to stand up for me. I never care about what those people say. I know, but I just won't allow anyone to say anything bad about my boyfriend. I whispered and hugged him even tighter, just like the countless times in the past when I watched Ethan and Maya leave together. This time, I openly held Ryan's hand in front of them, hugged his arm like a human pendant, and let him feed me the candied haw while we walked towards the cafeteria. We're just showing off our affection. When you meet someone you like, you naturally know how to do it without being taught. While having a meal, I heard the girls at the neighboring table chatting. I didn't expect Ryan to smile, and he looked pretty good when he did. The girl opposite him immediately patted him. Oh, he's already taken. He and Isla, the campus queen, are really sweet together. Ryan's computer science class didn't have morning sessions, so he came to class with me. This was a small class, and there weren't many people in the room. Everyone became much more awake because of Ryan's arrival. But what caused an even bigger stir was that Lyra, another female school jock who used to hang out with Ryan a lot, also showed up. Lyra had taken a leave of absence from school some time ago, and everyone thought she wouldn't be back soon. Lyra had dyed her hair black and let down her always high-tied ponytail for the first time, making her already slender chin look even more delicate. She was wearing a white Chanel-style suit today. The top was open, revealing the sexy strapless top underneath, making the boys beside her blush and dare not look directly. Suddenly, I remembered that Lyra had also been elected as the department flower of the computer science department. It's just that later she liked to pretend to be a tomboy and play with Ryan and the others. Seeing Ryan and me walking in, Lyra simply said, "Haha, Ethan is coming to class too." Ryan didn't even look at her and just took my hand and sat down at the back. Lyra laughed and still turned her head with a smile and said, "Is it necessary? I just failed to confess my love to you. Do you have to avoid me like this? Even if we can't be lovers, we can still be friends, just like before. Can I still be your little follower?" Ryan snorted coldly through his nose and silently took a piece of paper to wipe the table for me. Lyra was still talking, and this time her gaze turned to me. "Ethan, I just realized you like someone like her. But what's the difference between me and her now? Why can't you even look at me?" Finally, Ryan couldn't bear it anymore and opened his mouth. He gritted his teeth and threatened, "Lyra, I don't want to be harsh to girls. Behave yourself." "Fine." Lyra giggled and then went to flip through the comic book spread out on the table. Actually, whether you love someone or not is really obvious. If I'm not mistaken, the comic book Lyra was reading was in the style Ryan liked. And at this moment, Ryan was frowning as he flipped through my advanced math textbook, pretending to think seriously. "Do you know how to solve this problem?" I deliberately leaned over to tease him. Ryan glanced at me, and his cheeks immediately turned red. He nodded and then shook his head. "Then I'll explain it to you." I blinked at him, and Ryan's face became even redder. He was so cute. I held back my laughter and used a pen to calculate and show him. After I seriously finished explaining the problem and looked up, I found the guy was hurriedly looking away. "Ryan," I pretended to be strict and said, "Were you looking at the textbook or at me just now?" He looked at me, then lowered his eyes like a puppy that had messed up. "Looking at you, Ryan. If you keep staring at me like this, the teacher will scold you." His eyelids twitched, and he said nonchalantly, "I'd still rather look at you." That picture appeared in my mind again. The girl was walking in front with the puppy on a leash. The puppy stared at the girl's back all the time. "Ryan, this time, I won't let you down again." After this class ended, Ryan was called out by a guy who said he had something to talk about. As soon as he left, Lyra came and sat down. She didn't say a word but just propped her head up and carefully examined me. I closed the textbook without changing my expression. "You've been looking at me during class. Haven't you seen enough yet?" The girl said with a smile. "Isla, he seems to really like you." "Although everyone says you're the campus belle, I'm still surprised he chose you. It's not that you're not good enough. It's just that Ryan is the best in my eyes." I looked into her eyes. They were a pair of very beautiful phoenix eyes, without envy or resentment, but sincere admiration from the bottom of her heart. Like a kind of tacit understanding among girls, I could feel she didn't have any ill will towards me. I nodded and said, "I understand how you feel. I'll take good care of him." Lyra picked up a strand of my hair, laughed, and said, "Do you know, when I first met him, I had the same hairstyle as you. I also liked to let my hair down back then. The first time I met Ryan was when I was blocked by a group of hooligans. None of the passersby stopped to help me. Only he. He rode his motorcycle straight towards them and blocked in front of me. When talking about Ryan, Lyra's eyes lit up, and the curve of her raised lips became more obvious. I still remember his cold side profile in the night. He was arrogant and unruly. His eyes were wild yet extremely clean, which was fatally attractive to people. He looked at those hooligans and calmly said, "Get on the bike." That was the first time I rode on his motorcycle. Later, I wanted to follow him all the time. So I simply tied up my hair and followed him everywhere like a brother. At first, he didn't let me follow him. Later, I fought with others several times desperately just to follow him and got into trouble. Then he had no choice but to let me follow him. Lyra's smile took on a bit of bitterness. I used to think that as long as I could stay by his side all the time, I'd have a chance, but I was wrong. Isla, for the first time, I lost to someone, and that person is you. Your appearance made me a complete loser. I looked at Lyra sympathetically and reached out to put my hand on her shoulder. Just as I was about to say some comforting words, Maya rushed in from somewhere. She must have already heard a lot of rumors in college. Now she didn't look in a good mental state at all. "Isla, I was indeed with Ethan before. It's my fault. I shouldn't have hidden it from you, but it was all his idea." Actually, I agreed reluctantly. Lyra raised her head with a strange expression and raised her eyebrows. Maya then continued, But now I've broken up with him. Isla, you'll always be my best girlfriend. To hell with all those guys. She forcibly took my hand with tears floating in her eyes. Let's go back to the old days, okay? Can we still be inseparable good girlfriends like before? Then what do you want? I said with a smile. Maya thought I was still as easy to deceive as before. She said with a sobbing voice, I, I said, I knew you wouldn't abandon me. You're the nicest person. Has Ryan been bullying you? If he dares to make you mad, I'll stand up for you. Stop, stop, stop. Lyra crossed her legs and said, Lady, the young couple is having a great relationship. Do you need to interfere? Who do you think you are? Lyra didn't know Maya, but Maya had heard of Lyra's name. She didn't dare offend this famous big sister. Instinctively, she took 2 steps back and whispered, I'm also doing this for Isla. I spoke from her perspective. If you don't like it, forget it. But she didn't say anything. I slowly said, Lyra is right. Maya, who do you think you are? I pronounced each word clearly. If I remember correctly, when I had a decent relationship with Ethan before, it was you who kept shouting that you wouldn't let me be bullied and that you'd stand up for me and settle scores with him. But in the end, you two got together, and I became the outsider instead. Now, do you want to use the same old trick and target Ryan? Lyra suddenly realized and summed it up. Isn't this the so-called green tea bitch plus slut-shaming bitch? She's really mastered the art of stealing her best friend's boyfriend. Maya had suffered multiple heavy blows from last night to today. Now even Lyra, who didn't know her at all, could expose her true nature incisively. She stamped her foot angrily and ran out of the classroom. I turned around and looked at Lyra. To our surprise, we both laughed at the same time. Maybe we can be friends, I said. Lyra pouted and said, forget it. After all, you're my rival in love. I don't want to see either of you two in the future. Today is my last attempt for myself. Well, I lost, I admit it. When Ryan came back that day, Lyra had already left the classroom, and the comic book she'd been flipping through all morning was already lying quietly in the trash can. The page was turned to the first page, and the handwriting on it was clumsy but clear. Ryan, could you please like Lyra? I felt like I was living in a honeypot every day after that. Ryan doted on me to the sky. He obeyed me in everything and was so enchanted that he sent me lots of gifts every day, eager to give me all the things he thought were cool. The arrogant and overbearing air he used to have seemed to disappear completely overnight. Not only did his hairstyle and dressing style become like those of a good student, but he also smiled more often. He was always proudly showing off to his buddies that he had a girlfriend. He talked a lot more, and those who knew him before could hardly recognize him. Only later did I realize that he hadn't changed his impulsive and adventurous nature. He had just restrained all his edges for me. Ryan even wanted to give me the key to his favorite sports car, but I firmly refused, because I had already received the best gift from him long ago. It was those letters when I was the loneliest and most helpless, and those beautiful yet lonely blue balloon flowers. In sharp contrast to this were Ethan and Maya. Maya had a terrible reputation. She almost got the same treatment I had endured in my past life. And Ethan was obviously much quieter, giving off an aura of depression all over. Many times when Ryan and I went shopping hand in hand, we'd run into him coincidentally somewhere. Although we didn't greet each other after passing by, I could strongly feel that a very intense gaze was fixed on me. Time flew by, and soon it was Christmas Eve. And in my past life, I died on that day. This year's Christmas Eve was accompanied by a thick layer of snow. The moonlight was bright and the ground was white. My lips were chapped for some reason. I was so angry that I ignored him for half a day and didn't agree to go out and play with him until evening. Ryan prepared a big Christmas box for me following what he saw on Douyin. Besides apples, there were stacks of red RMB in it. I was amazed at his extravagance and also had no way to handle his straightforward way of expressing love. The pedestrian street was lively with many couples. The girls' faces were flushed, and their hands were held by the boys and put into the boys' pockets. Only the straightforward guy, Ryan, with his zipper open as if he wasn't afraid of the cold, held my hand and put it into his arms. Aren't you cold? I asked him. Ryan smiled foolishly and said, No, I'm actually pretty warm. During this time, I almost forgot that my boyfriend used to be a school jock, feared by everyone. Every day he had a silly yet happy look. He would also feed stray cats and dogs and became patient with everything. Just as we were walking along the street, there was suddenly a commotion in the crowd. For some reason, the moment I heard the noise from that side, I suddenly had a violent palpitation. A fear originating from the bottom of my bones surrounded me. I shook my head hard to make myself sober up. It turned out that a drunk man had fallen on a girl. The girl's boyfriend was so furious that he was about to teach the man a lesson, but the man's crew immediately came over. The girl quickly said, "It's a misunderstanding, it's a misunderstanding," and hurriedly pulled the boy away. Damn it! Two idiots. The drunk man with the smell of alcohol stood up and clapped his hands. He was speaking clearly. Forget it, forget it. There are plenty of schoolgirls like this. Come on, bro. We'll take you to that bar to have fun. Let's drive there. Ryan stopped in his tracks and looked over. His eyes were pitch black, and thin, bloodshot veins slowly appeared in his eyeballs. Isla, wait a moment. I'll go buy you a chocolate milk tea. There are cops on duty over there. You just sit here and wait for me. Don't go anywhere, okay? I'll be back ASAP. I felt something was off, but still agreed. Not long after Ryan left, I saw the person I hated the most. Ethan, who usually wore white or light blue shirts, was wearing black clothes tonight. He was still standing a few steps away, looking at me without saying a word. But since I'd promised Ryan to wait for him here, I wouldn't leave easily. I changed my sitting position and casually crossed my legs. According to Ethan's words, I could never like a girl who behaves weirdly and shows off her sharp edges. How ridiculous. In the past, because Ethan liked wearing light blue shirts, I bought many long blue dresses. Lyra, who liked Ryan, would tie up or let down her hair because of him. Ryan changed himself into a well-behaved, good student look for me. Now, Ethan put on black clothes. He used to dislike them most for me. Everyone changes themselves because of the person they like, but they don't know that love itself is something that breaks all the rules. There will always be someone whose appearance will break through all your expectations. He may not be perfect, but the moment he appears, there will be a voice in your heart saying, "It's him." Isla, can't we go back to the past? Ethan suddenly spoke. The past? Was it the past without Maya? I remembered that in junior high and high school, Ethan always rode a bike to take me to and from school. He seldom talked. All the way, I was chattering while he was listening. When I said something funny, he didn't move a muscle. Maybe only the wind knew whether he laughed or not at that time. Because I had always been highly sought after in school, he said he hated the feeling of being talked about when walking with me, so he made an agreement that we weren't allowed to show we knew each other on campus. And after Maya came into the picture, he would only bring 1 cup of milk tea when Maya and I were waiting for him. It was strawberry flavored. Strawberry milk tea was Maya's favorite, but he forgot that I also liked milk tea. And my favorite was chocolate flavored. Ethan, what do you think? I said in a deep voice. Is it necessary to go back to the past with me? The Maya you like has eyes only for you. She's faking it, I can tell, Ethan finally admitted. I couldn't help but sneer. Was it fun to let her torture me? Ethan's eyes flickered slightly, a vein. I just wanted you to restrain your sharp edges a bit. You were too dazzling. I always felt you wouldn't stay by my side forever. I'm sorry. This was the first time in my life that I heard Ethan apologize to someone. Unfortunately, this apology came too late and had no meaning at all. I don't think we have anything more to say. Some people will appreciate roses when they see them, while others worry that the thorns will hurt them, so they choose to make them wither all the same. Such a selfish person doesn't deserve my forgiveness. Suddenly, an anxious figure came running over. Lyra's face was as pale as paper, and she was so anxious she was on the verge of crying. Oh no, Isla! Ryan got into a fight with others. There were a lot of them on the other side, and they were all drunk. Call the police quickly. When we rushed to the scene, I saw fragments all over the ground in the alley ahead, as well as faint bloodstains. People were lying all over the place in disarray, and my heart was breaking. Don't go over there. My voice was very low. I had never been so calm yet so crazy at the same time. Ethan and Lyra were scared by my expression. Ethan still insisted on going forward, but was sharply stopped by Lyra. Isla, you go. If anything goes wrong, call us immediately. The police and the ambulance will be here soon. I nodded. I knew that at this moment, Ryan only wanted to see me. I slowly walked forward. Many people were lying on the ground, and there were heavy marks of being beaten with sticks on their bodies. I couldn't imagine that my boyfriend, all alone, faced this group of people without any help, but he still won. He wasn't uninjured. He just kept pushing like crazy until the end. Maya was also there. She was kneeling on the ground, trembling all over and saying something. Yes, the girl the drunk man flirted with just now was Maya. The boy beside her at that time was Ethan. Ethan couldn't give up Maya's docility and meekness, but he also couldn't let go of me, his childhood sweetheart. How could I not feel sick at the sight of him like this? I was just angry that Ethan left me again to find her. I walked to a place with fewer people and a fit of pique. Coincidentally, I met that group of people at the entrance of the parking lot. I was so scared that I said, "Our campus beauty, Isla, is really good looking. If you're so capable, go find her." Maya was trembling violently all over. She knelt on the ground, stammering, and finally couldn't help fainting. The stick in Ryan's hand, who had been half kneeling on the ground and struggling to support himself, loosened, and he also fell down. But the moment he fell, I caught him. "Isla?" I saw liquid falling on his shoulder. Only then did I realize that he was crying. "Why are you crying, Isla?" The guy's face was a bit pale, but he still smiled happily at me. "Look, I beat them all down by myself. He was like a child waiting for praise," Ryan said weakly. "Isla, I had a very vivid dream." "In the dream, it was that bald, drunk man who drove into you. I almost went crazy. I remembered his face very clearly, so I couldn't help but follow them. When I heard Maya was going to bring them to find you, everything I saw in the dream instantly flooded into my mind. I couldn't control my emotions, so, fool! I suddenly burst out crying and laughing at the same time. Whether in the past life or this life, he would always be so desperate to protect me, not allowing anyone to offend me. He had never changed. Ryan put his head on my shoulder, and I heard him say softly, "Isla, unlike in the dream, I can finally protect you by your side." I tried hard to hold back the stinging feeling in my eyes, stretched out my fingers, and carefully traced his eyebrows and eyes. I said very softly, "Puppy, I'm here to take you home." The last letter he sent me in my past life was a long paragraph. The flower language of the balloon flower is eternal love and hopeless love. My love for you is eternal, but I know that perhaps I can't expect you to turn around. You definitely don't know a guy named Ryan. You also definitely don't know that blue was the color you were wearing when I first saw you. That day, you were wearing a very fairy-like long blue dress, carrying a school bag, and walking on the path under the shade of the trees. The moment I saw you, my whole world became clear and bright. I'd never seen such a beautiful girl. I pointed at you and said to my buddies, "Is that the campus beauty, Isla? I must win her over." The funny thing is that later I found out I was actually a coward. I only dared to watch you from a distance and didn't dare to approach you at all. The countless moments when we accidentally met and passed by each other were actually rehearsals I had planned and mustered up the courage to do over and over again. At a certain moment, I suddenly realized that such a dazzling girl belonged to the world, not to Ryan. It was also on that day, I suddenly realized that such a dazzling girl belonged to the world, not to Ryan. It was also on that day that I suddenly had a strong urge to see him. For the first time, I dragged my weak and powerless body and ran out of the house. Because I was too impatient, I had a car accident while crossing the road and died on the spot. Fortunately, I was reborn as a result of this misfortune. Isla doesn't belong to this world. Isla belongs only to Ryan. My dearest puppy, please believe that this time I will never let go of your hand.